All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today we're talking about how to build a rock-solid, highly secure environment for your organization's most sensitive data. We're going to be looking really closely at the ISO/IEC 4201-2023 standard, specifically zeroing in on how we monitor data access and establish controls. In today's digital landscape, securing access to sensitive information isn't just some nice-to-have best practice anymore. It's absolutely the foundation of any privacy management system, especially as we start plugging more complex AI into our everyday workflows. So we're going to explore how to construct a digital vault that keeps the wrong people out, seamlessly lets the right people in, and keeps you perfectly compliant with one of the most rigorous international standards out there.
Right now, do you know exactly who is inside your system? It's a pretty simple question, right? But honestly, it's the kind of thing that makes IT managers literally break out in a cold sweat. Just picture this: a well-meaning marketing associate accidentally stumbling into highly confidential HR payroll files simply because they clicked the wrong folder. It sounds kind of absurd, but without proper controls, that chaotic reality of unauthorized access is something we desperately need to prevent. We always picture cyber threats as these shadowy, external hackers in hoodies. But insider threats, even the purely accidental ones, caused by sloppy system architecture, are just as dangerous and way more common. That kind of unauthorized access can lead to massive security breaches or identity theft. So, we've got to start by getting a firm, uncompromising grip on exactly who is walking through the front door.
Let's start with part 1, the gatekeepers, establishing access controls. So, the absolute golden rule when establishing these gatekeepers is that nobody gets a master key. Period. In the industry, we call this the principle of least privilege, or PULP for short. Basically, your employees are only granted access to the specific data they absolutely need to shine in their daily roles. If you have a data analyst in marketing who only needs customer demographics to run a campaign, they should under no circumstances have access to sensitive financial or HR data. Limiting access to just the bare minimum dramatically reduces the blast radius if a breach ever does happen. And keep in mind, this rigorous limit applies to everyone across the board. We're talking full-time employees, third-party contractors, vendors, the whole 9 yards. Because let's face it, third-party vendor access is often the weakest link in an organization's security posture.
Now, back in the day, a lot of organizations relied on something called discretionary access control, or DAC. This is the old, really risky way of doing things where individual data owners just use their own discretion to hand out access. Sure, it's flexible, but it requires a massive amount of trust, scales terribly as you grow, and inevitably leaves gaping vulnerabilities. To actually meet modern standards, we have to transition to the ISO-compliant, highly structured approach known as role-based access control, or RBAC. With RBAC, your access is strictly dictated by your actual job title and function. You're assigned a role, and that role has predefined, locked-in permissions. It's a real game changer because it simplifies things for IT, strictly enforces that principle of least privilege we just talked about, and makes sure your access levels are perfectly auditable across the entire company.
Okay, that brings us to the core concept of separation of duties. We absolutely have to divide responsibilities here to prevent any single point of failure. Think about it. The person who enthusiastically initiates a high-value financial transaction, they simply cannot be the same person who approves it. By dividing these critical tasks among multiple people, we're actively preventing conflicts of interest and deliberate fraud. It's a built-in system of checks and balances. If someone tries something malicious or even just makes a massive honest mistake, another person is structurally required to be in the loop to catch it before the damage is done.
So your roles are perfectly assigned. Great, but how do we actually prove people are who they say they are? Multi-factor authentication, or MFA. We are moving way beyond the scary reality of employees using easily guessable passwords like password123. MFA requires multiple, unique layers of proof before letting anyone in. It usually combines 3 things: something you know, like a password, something you have, like a secure app on your phone, and something you are, like a fingerprint or facial scan. ISO/ISO 42001 specifically targets administrative functions for this. Admins hold the keys to the kingdom, right? So protecting their accounts with MFA means that even if a hacker steals their password, they are still completely locked out without that physical second factor.
Moving right along to part 2, the watchtowers, real-time data monitoring. To actually pull off this real-time monitoring, we bring in 2 heavyweight tools to work in tandem. On one side, we have Identity and Access Management, or IAM systems. These beautifully manage your user identities, enforce your policies, and log every single access request. Think of IAM as the bouncer at the door, meticulously checking IDs and deciding who gets in.
But the bouncer only sees the door, right? That's why we have SIEM, Security Information and Event Management Systems. If IM is the bouncer, SIEM is the ultimate watchtower camera network covering the entire building. It collects and correlates event log data from across your entire IT infrastructure in real time, looking for complex, hidden patterns that a human could never spot on their own.
So what are these tools actually hunting for? Anomalies. They're configured to instantly trigger an alert if something just doesn't look right. For example, if someone tries to access highly confidential data at 3 in the morning, or if there's a string of repeated failed logins that heavily suggest a brute force attack is happening. They're also watching for sudden, massive data downloads that could mean corporate espionage. By catching these suspicious activities the very second they happen, your security team can isolate the systems and stop a minor anomaly before it spirals into a catastrophic data breach.
And that brings us to our final section, Part 3, the ledger, documentation and audits.
When it comes to an ISO 42001 audit, specificity is literally everything. The lead auditor doesn't just want a vague list of names. Oh no, they expect perfectly organized granular logs. They want the user ID, the exact down-to-the-second timestamp, the specific data set that was accessed, and exactly what was done to it. Did they just read it, or did they modify or delete it? Plus, they want the context. Why did they need this access right then? Having this level of detail forms an unbreakable chain of accountability, making it incredibly easy to investigate incidents and prove you have total visibility over your environment.
But we live in the real world, and things don't always go to plan. Sometimes your friendly IT department needs temporary access to troubleshoot a glitch or deploy an emergency patch. That's a totally normal part of IT. However, any ad hoc exception absolutely must be documented meticulously. We need a hard record of who was granted access, the exact duration, and the highly specific technical reason for it. This flawless audit trail is critical because, believe it or not, forgotten, undocumented temporary access is one of the most common ways companies fail their ISO audits and suffer major breaches.
The standard itself is super clear on this. Documentation is not just bureaucratic busywork designed to annoy your IT staff. Maintaining detailed records is your definitive proof. It shows that your real-time tracking, your IAM, your SIEM, the whole shebang, is actually functioning perfectly out there in reality, not just theoretically on paper. It's how you demonstrate to any auditor or stakeholder that you aren't just crossing your fingers and hoping for the best, but actively managing security risks in a fully verifiable way.
So I want to leave you with this one final, vital question. Your gates are built, your watchtowers are manned, but if an auditor knocked on your door today, what would your ledger reveal? Would it show a meticulously organized, fully compliant system, or a chaotic web of undocumented exceptions and overly generous permissions? I really hope this explainer leaves you feeling empowered to go out there, audit your own access logs, tighten up those controls, and definitively secure your organization's digital vault. Thanks for learning with me today.